We used to get our kicks reading surfing magazines. Some good-looking people wearing Lee Cooper jeans. They're breaking on the headland, they're breaking on the shore. And when you're living in Hawaii, they're breaking at your door. Da, 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 da.
I would say the reason why all of us are here right now is because I said they were going to interview legends. So everybody thinks they're a legend, and they all have a legend. I got to get there.
Jim Tasker, Department of Sanitation, New York City.
Bud Simons. Used to be a firefighter, not no more. Retired.
Ryan Daniels, ironworker.
John Deanna, ironworker, surfer.
James Breslin, real estate broker, surfer.
Hank Gallagher, DEP, surfer.
We used to wet our fingers on surfing magazines. Gonna throw school and follow those scenes. Gonna get a combi and go from beach to beach. Be the kind of people the authorities can't reach.
Well, it was the city of New York, of course, and surfing wasn't exactly a welcome thing. Surfing was not an understood thing. It was more of that was an Hawaiian thing or a Californian thing.
We weren't accepted. New York surfers were like untouchables, don't go there. When I moved to California, they were astounded. There's no waves in New York. All they could picture was like waves breaking on 42nd Street. I had to draw on the map all the time and kind of show them that, you know, this is a water city. There's water everywhere. Manhattan is an island.
Most people didn't even know about Rockaway. Rockaway was a town of its own. Rockaway you cannot connect with. Like even when you come down here now, once you cross that bridge, you're in a whole different mentality. You're into a whole different way. When I went to Manhattan, it was like, I felt like a country kid going to Manhattan. It was like a whole different way of life. If the train didn't come down here, I wouldn't even know Manhattan. And I didn't look across the water, I wouldn't even know what Manhattan was. A lot of my friends are afraid to go over those bridges. They feel as though once they go over those bridges, they lose their identity.
It's hard to believe that there's Rockaway Point. You can see it on the map. It's right there. It was not right there. It was a million miles away. It was a summer community. It was me and 5 other families out there all winter. It was like being a Maori or something.
The problem with Rockaway is that it is very geographically isolated. Rockaway has very bad transportation in and out. You have to take the A train, which goes on forever to get to the city. It's like a really long, horrible trip. And, you know, there's just nothing happening.
There was nothing going on. I mean, the bus stop was the big place to go hang out because it had a roof. You know, it was the same kids you were with all the time. Now we're standing in the bus stop.
There's not really any industry there. There's some nursing homes and hospitals. So you're really kind of shanghaied.
And I had no idea that it was like such an isolated, different thing going on there than from the rest of the country or the rest of just New York. I mean, Brooklyn was a whole different place. When I became a teenager, I started to go to Brooklyn to hang out. It was like, wow, this is a whole different world.
A friend of mine, he bought a surfboard out of a sporting good place on 42nd Street. What was the name of that place? Harvey's?
Richards.
And to get it home, he had to take it home on the subway system. So he got it through the turnstile and everything, and a couple of times he got stopped, but they let him get it through the system, and he put it right down the Rockaway.
This building here is where surfing started in Rockaway in terms of surf shops. This was Rock Out Surf Shop. It wasn't a friendly place. So it was a little haunt. You wanted a surfboard, you stopped in there, you had some money, they could get you aboard. This was a surf shop here. How do you think that's there?
Yes, but surf shop no more.
I know. I understand. Okay, thank you.
When I was a kid, it was like Duke-Anamoka when people lived on the beach, swimmers, or lifeguards. And almost nobody else knew anything about it.
Duke Wanamoco, the famous Hawaiian surfer, he came here to do a film back in the 30s.
As far as I know, he is the first that I knew of to surf in Rockaway.
My father told me he used to surf on an ironing board. But what was called surfing then was certainly not what we call surfing now. That was like getting up and going toward the beach. There was no actual steerage and real wave activity as to what it turned into now. It's like a whole different thing. The first time I saw surfing was on TV, like the Pipeline Contest or Waimea Bay, and I was like riveted by it. I couldn't believe it. It took a while to actually see a real surfboard.
When did this Endless Summer movie come out? Does anybody know the year?
65.
1965. 64.
Kips Bay Theater was the place. That's the only place it was shown.
It was remarkable because they had two surfboards in the lobby, and nothing ever looked so out of place as seeing two surfboards in a lobby in a theater in Manhattan.
What every surfer dreams of finding is a small wave with perfect shape, what we call a perfect wave. The odds against finding that are 10 million to 1. They finally got their first look at Cape St. Francis, South Africa.
And I love the idea that they had a whole life built around it. That it just wasn't something they did on, weekends, but they went into surfing like it was a real thing. And I was unaware of it being that. So after I saw the Endless Summer, I was so hooked.
When that movie came out, that was, my father will tell you, that was the ruination of my life, he thinks. Because when I saw that movie, he took me, I think it was my communion that year, he took me to see the Endless Summer. And when I saw that movie, I just wanted to surf. Young kids, and we all just followed our older gurus. Like, Tassie, come here, like this guy here. I was a young kid, and he must have ran me over about 50 times a day. So I learned how to surf the hard way, the old way, getting run over.
It was a pecking order. First of all,
you had to go through him and Jerry and Mello, and then everybody else got their share,
There was only waves, and so many waves came in. Hey,
I had to go to work.
Jerry, you had enough. Let me have one. And you'd have to try to get a wave like that. Otherwise, Jerry would take every wave. He'd drop in on you. He'd paddle off, get in front of you, paddle around you.
Down at 38th Street, there was a whole group of guys. We had a whole pack of guys that hung out together. But Jimmy and I definitely were a couple of the standouts. Fast. We called him the Rocket Man. John Deanna, Buddy Samus. Bobby Toronto more or less surfed Breezy Point, Uptown Rockaway, more than down here. But Bobby was around.
Most of the people that I surfed with at 38th Street were people that I went there with. I remember Breslin as being somewhat of a local there. I know he went there a lot. And I went there with Patty Reen and Dennis Farrell.
There was a lot of guys surfed down there. And a lot of them are still surfing. Most of the guys that the crew from down there ended up in Long Beach.
Let's see, who else? Tank went there.
Tank. And then there was Donnie Toronto, Bobby, and those guys making full moon surfboards up in Rockaway.
Well, this is downtown.
This is considered
The
downtown.
90s was uptown. There was different cliques, but everybody basically like the good guys from up there hung out down here, and the good guys from Long Beach hung out here. This was like the premier spot on the East Coast. There was like 15 of us. Henry was one of them, and we surfed basically all together and hung out together.
Henry was a nice man.
I was the only guy he ever yelled at.
Yeah, Henry was
a good guy.
Henry was an institution here.
Yes, right.
Henry would show up with his
50 feet of whitewater. That was his name.
Henry wasn't the greatest surfer in the world, but you couldn't knock him off that damn surfboard. Yeah. Henry just was like glue. So we just called him 50 feet.
Every day you drank, you smoked, you surfed all day, you worked out, pull-up contests, push-up contests, and then every day the boxing gloves came out and Lou and Bud beat the crap out of you. That every day you got beat up. And that's the way it was. You got tough around here.
The people who lived in Rockaway generally were lower middle class. You know, the surfers come from lower middle class families, if not totally poor families.
And you have like almost every 10 blocks a different socioeconomic status, different ethnic, different type of housing. You had wealthy Irish families that owned property, bars, restaurants, had yachts. You had Jews who were working class Jews, who were policemen and school teachers. And on the streets, it got played out. There were a lot of ethnic tensions and a lot of real diversity in terms of class that was exacerbated by differences in religion and ethnicity. When I was growing up in the early part of the 60s, before the Beatles, before the drugs, you really just didn't cross over the line. Jews hated Christians, Christians hated Jews.
Jews weren't allowed in Breezy Point. It was like a very closed community. And after I had become a teenager and made friends, all my friends were Jewish from Rockaway, and I used to drag them down to Breezy Point, and they would suddenly go, "There's no Jews down here," and they would sort of get the idea that something was up.
I grew up speaking fluent Hebrew, studying Torah, wearing orthopedic shoes, and one day, instead of going to temple to pray on the Sabbath, I took a detour and I discovered the schoolyard of St. Francis de Sales and Irish Catholic boys playing basketball. They looked like gods to me, and I just never got over it. I mean, to date a Catholic boy, an Irish boy, they assumed that you were a whore, but they said hilla, they didn't say whore. And it was just bad. You were an outlaw and outcast.
Surfing was really the first thing that gave us a social format to interact in.
We all found a real common interest, and the common interest was we surfed. And it didn't matter if you were Irish, it didn't matter if you were Italian. There were even some black kids coming around and started to surf, which was very, very different from the times in which we were living because, all of us came from, different worlds, and we found our way here.
It brought people together across class lines and ethnic lines. After the surfing and the drugs, Catholic and Jew became one under the Church of the Blue Sky.
Here it didn't matter whether you had a dime or a dollar. One balance, and that was you got a surfboard, you got wetsuit, you got wax, you have waves.
Unless you were like Breslin here, who had a new surfboard every week. Right? He came down to the beach with a new board every week. The best thing to do was buy one of his used boards for like $10,
We all hung out together on 69th Street. That's when we met a lot of different people. And James and Kevin were part of that, influx of strange faces.
I came with a twin brother. We both surfed. So we came as a tandem act. And this was a driving force. Here they come. Here comes Brez. Here comes his brother. Nobody could tell us blonde hair, long hair, surfboards. Somewhat aggressive, sometimes probably abusive.
They lived in Forest Hills. They were the spoiled little rich kids. Little, fat, spoiled, rich kids. I'm not sure if it was James or Kevin, because they looked alike. They last one out, and the cops got the clipboard. "What's your name? I'm going to give you a summons." And he said, "You're not going to give me a fucking summons. And a little kid with a wise mouth talking to a police officer, and the cop went to clock him in the head with the clipboard. And he says, "You're not gonna give me a summons. My father's Jimmy Breslin." And the cop, in mid-stroke, stopped, told his partner to get back in the car, and they drove away. And that was the first time we actually realized that the kid had a little clout, you know? In the old days, it was beautiful.
You couldn't get a spot in the sand.
Bungalows, hotels, the whole face of the boardwalk was arcades, places to eat, concessions.
At one point, Rockaway was considered every man's paradise. It was just, if you were a working person of any religion or any race, you could live really well. You could have all the beautiful things. You didn't have to be a millionaire to live on the water.
Early 1900s, 20s, 30s. It was mainly a summer town. Umbrella places, all this place booming every day.
I got on the phone and called a girl, said meet me down at Curly Pearls for nay na na na, nay na na na. In my high heel shoes and fancy fads, I ran down the stairs, hailed me a cab going nay na na na, nay na na na, nay na na na. Oh, na 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 na.
Eventually, they burnt down, they tore down, urban renewal, and they never rebuilt it. It turned into just vacant lots.
But I tell you what, for me as a young boy here, growing up in Rockaway, there was no more fun in the world than hanging out in the bungalows over here. Remember the bungalows, Brian? Everybody partied 7 days a week. No one locked the doors.
Yeah, it was a nice neighborhood back then.
We were real young in the 60s. In the 60s, it was all bungalows here. They didn't see that the neighborhood was going down, so I think a lot of even the landlords are probably burning their own houses now. Yeah. There was more fires here than anywhere at one time in the city, right? Fire engines going all night long, and it was a shame because your heart was burning because it was just all the good times in your life. There was an amusement park right up here on the boardwalk.
Yeah, that's in the 60s.
Yeah, that was in the 60s.
You know, it seemed that Playland also went downhill when they got rid of all of those bungalows.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If nobody else but the people from those bungalows went there, that was a rocking place to go.
Yeah, I love Playland.
Me too. I got really good memories of that.
They came up with this brilliant decision to basically destroy most of the bungalows and housing in Arvern and Edgemere. Under Mayor John Lindsay, they took away these lands, you know, from people under domain and bulldozed the houses and then busted out, never came out with the money and just left it to rot.
Now all that was left was the black community of Hamels and Arvern. And they were really old communities. The city started to take homeless people off the street and put them on the subway to Rockaway.
Eventually, that's all that was left, was projects. You know, the projects in the 40s, the projects in the 50s, the projects in the 80s, the projects in Far Rockaway.
They had more low-income housing and welfare here in Rockaway than in the entire rest of the city.
Rockaway's the only place to work. You would be on welfare and live right on the beach.
It got to a point where it was a joke that there was this giant piece of waterfront property. I mean, you got people coming to the Hamptons paying millions of bucks for an acre on the ocean. And here was 15 minutes from Manhattan, this giant piece of land with nothing but wild dogs living on it.
I've seen a guy down there hunting. Guy down there hunting rabbits and pheasants. He has dogs. He's walking around in the woods with a shotgun.
You had to designate a car watcher to watch the cars so nobody would break into the cars. It was just a wilderness, straight packs of dogs, drug addicts, the thieves that wander around.
Those projects over there used to call Little Vietnam. People get shot every day. You hear gunshots going.
Yeah.
All the time.
There was also a bunch of red light bandits that were out there, you know, and get stopped for a light under the L. They would jump out with guns. My friend Ann got pistol whipped at a red light. It was like really scary. It was no man's land.
So the beaches weren't clean. They didn't have a sand-swept appearance that you have today. There would be broken concrete, and there'd be, garbage strewn that would go with the tide, in and out. It was surrounded by poverty, surrounded by decay. You had more garbage-strewn lots here. You have cars buried all up and down the beaches here. Guys would dump cars all the time. It had been forgotten about by the city, forgotten about by the public, and it was a haven for surfers.
When everybody thought we were nuts, my friends from California, friends from Hawaii, friends from Florida, and they would come down here and they would see this barren, desolate, decrepit neighborhood, and they were like, wow, this is scary. And this was home. I felt safe here. One day when waves were really phenomenal down here, and I wasn't out 10 seconds, a big wave came in. I said, my wave. I turned around, I took off, and the wave threw me onto the rock jet. They carried me out all fours to the hospital. My left guy was this big, and doctor says nothing I can do. Ice it. I said, maybe surfing in the cold water be good for you. He goes, do whatever you gotta do. So I said, take me back to the beach.
When it got good here, this was like Hawaii. This was all Hawaii.
Once 72nd Street stopped, basically...
And that's what I grew up in 72nd.
The community changed. The community changed demographically, economically. And you had the housing projects. Those of whom lived in the housing projects never came near the beach. The black community did not come to the beach. The Puerto Rican community did not come to the occasionally to fish.
We never had racial problems like a lot of other people did, you know, surfing guys down at the beach. Especially we were the lifeguards, and some of the black residents that lived around here that came down, they knew that we were here to save their life, if anything.
When the waves got really, really, really big and you couldn't paddle out, we would go downtown where the waves would be easier to paddle through. And 38th Street was where we would wind up. A better wave, a bigger wave, a different wave than the beach break that we were always used to. Eventually, the sand eroded and the rock jetty was demolished by the storms. So the tip of the rock jetty was demolished and fanned out on the ocean bottom like a reef. And whenever the waves got really, really big, all good, they would come across that reef. And it wasn't like surfing the beach breaks. It was a reef break. And it broke. Every wave was a really nice tube ride, you know? And that's what we were into then, you know, and we still are, but it was an intense wave. It was very fast, very heartbreaking. You could actually, when a wave broke over the reef, you could hear the clunk, clunk, clunk of the rocks moving around underwater from the wave moving the rocks.
For some reason, that beach just caught a left. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a beautiful wave.
It had the biggest waves, the best tubes, best curl, you know. That's what surfing's about, to get in that tube, you know? Like what they call the pipeline in Hawaii. Here was the tube. You got in the tube and you stayed in the tube the whole way to get in that tunnel and have that wave coming over you. Better than sex, man. That was it.
But you used to have to watch out for the washing machine and the dumped Fiat. You'd be in a tube and all of a sudden you'd see a washing machine.
Of course, there was no surfing beach for the surfers, and we used to always get in fights with the police and stuff like that everywhere, and getting arrested and getting thrown out in the water. So finally, they gave us a spot down here. That's how it started, really.
Earlier, these beaches were New York City Parks and Recreations beaches, and they were controlled by the city and the lifeguards. And, you know, you used to run into the water with your surfboard and grab a few waves until, you know, lifeguards would try to whistle guys out uptown. They wouldn't come out, and then they'd bring the police into it.
That was very serious outlaw behavior where people would be ticketed, people were arrested, and people would, you know, surf at night. You know, in Rockaway, they would surf at night by the lights of Fascination, which was this place where you would play skee ball, like this gambling thing, and wild, just wild.
Going back sometime in the late 60s at 72nd Street, there was a surfing riot. Guys all had gone to the beach to surf, and everybody raced to the water with their surfboards, and we stayed in the water defiantly. They brought a police launch in, whom then were, you know, escorting surfers off the beach.
The cop would put his siren on and the warning lights. Whoever was the last one out of the water, the cop would grab and give a summons to. And if the waves were good, people would stay in the water as long as they could, an extra hour or so. So the cop would be standing there for an hour, and everybody's trying to get one more wave.
The problem was there was one designated surfing beach, actually two. There were never any waves at those particular locations. So people would gravitate to 41st or 38th Street where you wanted to surf.
And any given day, cars would barrel down this street, and guys would run from their vehicles, surfboards and wetsuits, and you'd find out they came from Babylon, they came from Brooklyn, they came from Manhattan. They came bus, train,
New
car,
Jersey.
you name it, they found their way here.
There was no rules here.
No rules here.
Some surfers would come along with a little bit of weed, maybe a vodka or a couple of beers, and
get tuned up.
It'd be a hangout, you know. You go surf, hang out, talk about the next place you're gonna surf.
Nobody was worried about a train. Nobody was worried about a watch. We're only worried about waves. 1972, September 2nd, the best swell of the century.
Oh my God.
When we're all in the water surfing, I got my wedding was supposed to be at 12:30. Jerry Armello, my best man, we were in the water surfing till 11:45. Everybody in the water left to go to my wedding. I got there, you know, Jerry and I, we were in our tuxes, no socks, no underwear, wet hair. And we had the reception at my in-laws' backyard. They had a big affair back there. And about, say, 3:30, the whole bridal party and all the guests from the wedding, we came back to the beach, case of champagne, little puppy dogs, the wife, everybody. We were down on the beach surfing till dark. And if you asked any of these guys here, do you remember Jimmy Tasker's wedding? They say, yeah, the waves were great.
Surfing is a priority. And you know, it's like he's doing it morning, noon, and night when it's there. And in September, it was really there. And there he was surfing his brains out. You know, I sort of felt like, you know, we just got married. Aren't you supposed to be at home with me?
Didn't matter if it was January 1st and the waves were halfway decent, we could go out.
You get up in the morning and there was surf. 3 hours later, there might not be any more surf, no matter how big it was. So when there was surf, nothing else mattered. People would do anything and everything to go surfing.
We used to pull into a Carvel place, get Carvel ice cream, you know. And the guy thought it was the greatest. Every once in a while, he used to give us a free ice cream just because we were doing such a nutty thing in the middle of winter.
Bud and I, Mark O'Malley and Lou, we used to come down the beach with one wetsuit in 20-degree weather, and the toughest guy got to use the wetsuit first, and then it worked the way down. I usually got it last.
Sharing them.
And then you'd have to take the wetsuit off in the freezing cold around a little fire, put the wetsuit on, freezing cold with sand on it, go out, catch one wave, get killed, come in. That's how we would do it. We'd borrow one wetsuit, one diving suit that was like 6 millimeters thick.
Yeah, the beam and tail, right, exactly.
They all had this thing that would like go between your legs and snap to keep the jacket down. So the kids never snapped the thing, so they all looked like they had tails. When they'd get up on the waves, that thing would be flying in the wind. It was like, you know, the most ungraceful looking outfit you could possibly get.
We didn't have a lot of money, I guess, back then, and rather than spend an extra $100 for a new wetsuit, we'd go out and buy a can of glue for $3 or $4, and then we'd take and patch up our wetsuit.
The whole bay would be frozen, and in the ocean, there would be blocks of ice floating. And on the waves, you know, you would take off and the ice would be there and you'd be bumping into it with your board. It was like really insane. But we built fires on the beach. There was a lot of stuff that floated in, and you could build fires that were as big as a house. And you could actually have the offshore wind blowing the heat to you while you were out there, although you would just get smatterings of it on your face, you know. It was freezing.
Whatever the conditions were, you lived here, you worked here, you surfed here. You didn't have a choice, you know, unless you packed your bags and left.
My folks moved to New York from California. I should have listened when my buddy said I warn ya. There'll be no surfing there, and no one even cares. My Woody's outside, covered with snow. New York's a lonely town.
Splitting for the coast was the big fantasy that you had, that you'd split for the coast.
My friends went to Hawaii. I went to Puerto Rico. I lived like a king. I didn't have a job. I was collecting unemployment. You donated blood once a month for $15.
Once you started to travel, and surfing always led you to travel, then you started to see different ways of living.
I think surfing saved people's lives, because before surfing, everybody was a bunch of psychotic hitters or bookworms or suicidal teenagers trapped in their parents' basements. Or like, what was there to do except think about going to college and get married? I mean, please, talk about killing the spirit.
Here, the attitude is this: graduate, get a job, get in a union, get married, have kids, and then die, or suffer, or something. At least that's how it looked to me when I was a kid. And it was kind of repulsive. I couldn't really see why we wanted to do that.
Everybody that came down this street with the surfboard was looking to do anything but that. Life is, you know, most people knew it, going on the trains to go to jobs, or going on the trains to go to some mundane situation. Nobody had anywhere to go anyway.
Can't block the life.
Nobody was working. We were surfing.
Everybody wore like safari jackets and had hash pipes in their jackets, and kids were gambling, and then, you know, of course, like drugs accelerated over the years.
You had a lot of young boys here, no longer free to spend days at the beach. You got to the age 17 or 18, you were drafted.
Twin soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own.
They had kids in the army, and they thought that the surfers and the long hairs were disrespectful, and how dare they walk around with long hair and American flags sewed to their pants while my son is in Vietnam dying. I could see their point too now, but then I didn't.
What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you know?
When they called everybody's name to bring up their papers, the guy had to call me 70 times. And then finally I looked up and I was like, you know, really gooned out. And he had to lead me out by the arm, and they put me in with a shrink. And I just sat at the shrink's desk and ran my fingernail up and down the edge of his desk like this, trying to draw on every movie I saw of like lunatics. And never answered any of his questions, and all I kept saying to him was, "You're not gonna tell my father, are ya?" And that did it. It worked.
And the sign said, long-haired freaky people need not apply. So I tucked my hair up under my hat and I went in to ask him why. He said, "You look like a fine, upstanding young man. I think you do." So I took off my hat. I said, "Imagine that, me working for you." Whoa, sign, sign, everywhere a sign, blocking out to see and re-breaking my mind. Do this, don't do that. Can't you read the sign?
I ran away from home when I was 17. Then I moved to the city. That changed everything.
We were little kids, and everything seemed very innocent. That all changed quickly.
You had like surfer junkies, and you had a big heroin problem in 1968.
A lot of people got into it and disappeared off the beach. And after being in the city for about a year, I kind of got sick because we were all into like lots of drugs, and it wore me down. And I was always prone to, you know, getting sick if I overdid. I got sick, went back to Rockaway, and that was when I just totally immersed myself in surfing, when I thought the city life didn't work for me. It was like, I never felt comfortable in Manhattan. And that was a real conflict for me, because I was not exactly comfortable in Rockaway either. But then I saw that the city didn't work, so I decided I would go with the lesser of two evils and go back there.
There's some tragic stories, and then there's also some people who got really bad and made it out, which is great too. You know, and they're surfing again.
I did it. I'm not bragging about it. It was, you know, it was the 60s. What more can I say? Drug use and experimentation was a big thing. The world only knew about smoking the pot and drinking. Everything else was always a secret.
I didn't see the partying, to tell you quite honestly, because it was out of the house. He never did it in front of me. You know, we have 5 children.
I was that secret user. Then when it came out that I had a problem, all hell broke loose. Then I didn't care who knew.
There was one day he went surfing and he didn't come home. And there was this woman, Connie, at the meeting. She says, "Carolyn, what do you mean he didn't come home from surfing?" You know, she said, "Maybe he drowned." It was really difficult. You know, we went through a very hard time, and you know, for the children, it was like, okay, if he drowned, this would be kind of nice and neat. Knowing how important the surfing is to him, I used to take the surfboard on the car and go to where I know he was hanging out. I used to take the surfboard and put it in the street and threaten to run it over with the wagon. We had this electric station wagon. I used to threaten to run over the surfboard, and he'd come out of the house. Thing that I couldn't hurt, but that I knew he'd love, was the surfboard.
You know, you look back now, it was the best of times and the worst of times, because it was sad. With some really lovely people, some of whom would have gone on as surfers to become quite good. But after a while, they just sort of disappeared for whatever reasons. They found, you know, other things to do in life. Some, of course, needed a simple thing, a job.
After I was into surfing, I guess, for 2 or 3 summers, I opened up a surf shop on 113th Street and started to make boards.
My friend Bob Turano, he started making boards in his basement. Then it just spread from there. Then we ended up having a surf shop and this and that.
And my brother was involved too. He was in charge of getting girls into the shop for him and Dennis, because I was always busy in the front and I never knew what I was going to find when I went out in the back where they were sanding.
We made a lot of boards really locally for the Uptown Rockaway guys and the Breezy Point guys. It was a neat little shop, a little local hangout, you know, for the Uptown surf guys. I mean, it was a kind of a novelty to be able to be involved with somebody who made surf.
People kept thinking it was a bar and coming in and ordering drinks. That's what they thought it was, you know. I don't know why, but it was in that part of Rockaway where it was just one bar after another, and then stuck in the middle of 3 bars was Full Moon Surfboard. And we had drunks staggering in continuously, looking for the bottles behind the bar, because when I built the counter, I did build it kind of high. I don't know why.
Oh, it was only open for 1 year. It was just, you know, no one, we weren't business orientated. First of all, in Rockaway, it's very limited season, so it's very hard. Back then, you know, there wasn't enough money.
Dennis is not a businessman. Dennis is a surfer. And I swear to you, if you had no money and you went to him, you would leave with a board, because he's interested in seeing people surf.
The street out here used to be Dakota Street before they went to the numbered streets. Yeah, they used the name Dakota. Plus, no one surfs in Dakota, obviously.
Hi, good morning.
They told me you guys have to pick it up. It's my third time, but
Okay, well, when it's safe for me to pick up, I'll pick it up. But that's not safe right now.
Jim lucked out. I mean, the city job worked out perfectly for him. I could never see. I could never see Jim in a 9-to-5 job. He'd be like going crazy.
You got to take that out of there, tie it up nice and neat so it don't poke me in the eye or hit me in the face. Jesus. Now, if we were down at the beach, I would have punched him in his face. Surfing is my career. I mean, I have children, I have a job, I have a wife, I have a house and all that stuff, but surfing is the focus.
All right, get the doors! Surfing enables me to be a better fireman, because when I was in shape, I could surf for 8 hours straight. You know, so you had to have strength and endurance to put the fire out. And you gotta stay calm under pressure. And the hours enable me to get the time in the water, which enables me to, you know, purge my body of a lot of the poisons. Now, how was that fire, Jerry? Were you scared up there? Saw that devil coming after us?
I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do. I always thought of myself in terms of, I guess I'll be a painter. But I didn't really have any defined ideas as to what my life was going to be like. I loved music. I was always trying to get that going. And it didn't seem to be in my life schedule that was going to happen.
Where a lot of them construction workers, because it's all seasonal, you know what I'm saying? And they can sort of pick and choose their time frame when they're going to work and when they're going to be off.
It was different for me there. I felt like a real outsider. I worked in construction, but I didn't like it. Which was funny, it all turned around and now I do like it. But then it was difficult.
I tried to teach you?
What's up, Tommy, babe?
No. This is the first job I met him on. Oh.
Just keeps you pretty agile, you know what I mean? Climbing around, lifting heavy things all day. It's great for surfing. Keeps you in shape. Yeah, keeps you in pretty good shape without having to work out that much, you know? Although I could lose a few pounds. We're getting older now. We're all in our 40s and 50s. And you got thousands of young guys surfing. There, everybody's paddling around, jockeying for position. There's a lot of guys who don't even know how to surf, sitting on the inside in the wave, so you got to go around them and they ruin your wave.
There's 12 miles of beach. Nothing to me on the sand, too.
Yeah, you shit guy.
Right, that's right. Who needs you?
The ongoing saga. I always say, if Jimmy and Jerry are happy, everyone in the water's happy. When they're not happy, everyone gets grouchy.
Don't try to make nice on the beach.
tries when he comes back on land, and then he wants to make nice. Someone probably dropped in on the other guy, you know? Jerry and Jimmy have been fighting for 40 years. I don't know who's the bigger baby. Nah, they rivals, I guess. Friends and rivals.
It's a large baby. It's a large baby.
We'll get him.
There's never enough surf around here, so when it does come up, the best day of the year, I'm standing behind a bar, trying to make a buck.
Look at Jerry, you know, he's never really settled down. He goes around to Mexico for the surf. He goes here for the surf. You know what I'm saying? He travels all over seeking the surf.
I'm really one of the only guys, you know, kind of hanging out and doing the same thing I did, you know, when I was 15, which I'm happy about. 2 weeks to Mexico. Hey, Buddha, suck it in.
Mostly work-guided people, more so than where the waves were, or else all of these Rockaway people would be living in Hawaii.
It's like some good ones out there. See now the tide's going out, and it's pulling on the swell, but it's not really that strong. With the outgoing tide, it slows down the sets. The incoming tide is a push of water, and it'll help things out. You know, if there's anything left over, if the wind holds up. So later today, like the tide's low at 12 o'clock. Later today, around 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon, could get good again.
It's not like we can go play golf on Saturday and Sunday and the golf course is always there, you know, or go to a ball game or watch football. I don't do any of that. We surf. So if the waves come up on a Wednesday morning, you make your calls to your friends, you all muster up with the night before, you watch the weather mat, and you go out and you hit it. You miss work, even to this day. 45 years old, I'll still miss a day of work, and all of them bosses know it. That's true.
Day of the World, September 11th, 2001.
Phenomenal surf.
The waves are incredible.
And the smoke from the trade center was coming straight over our head. In fact, when you seen it from the satellite map, the smoke was going directly over the Breezy Point jetty. So it's you can't breathe right. The waves are a little rough. Let's not stay here, even though the waves are big. So we came back here. We're heading back to Long Beach, and Jerry goes, "Oh, come on, let's go check out 38th Street, man. Let's just go check it out, just see if it's breaking." And we come down here, and who's here all alone, by himself, in the car, doing something, not in the car, but in the trunk, doing something in the trunk, in his brand new BMW, is his twin brother. Heavens, in the middle of nowhere. What are you doing here, man? He's like, what are you guys doing here?
I'm at the beach, you know, and I'm like, if I'm gonna go, I'm going having fun, you know? So we stayed at the beach, we're surfing, we're having a good time, but it was subdued. It was like in the morning when we were all out in the water together, we were ragging on each other, harassing each other, hassling each other, snaking each other for waves. After that, we were all like, go ahead, man. This one's yours, you know, and okay, it's my turn. It's your turn this time, you know?
I jumped in the car, picked up everybody from the job, brought them here, put on the TV, and started dialing Dennis's phone number. And I got the answering machine. And I said, I know that you're in every fire that anybody gets killed in. You're always the first one in there. I said, I hope you're not in this one. If you're not there, please call me back. I didn't get a phone call for a little while. When he finally called, he told me he was surfing in Breezy. Surfing saved his life.
I saw the fire and I came out of the water. Someone told me that the towers had just collapsed. So it was like, boom, you know.
I want to thank Henry Miller for the most informative drill.
Well, you know, Mario,
I wish
the old days, we didn't have cameras.
Could you imagine if this was 6 to 8 feet?
Look at the condition.
God.
Yeah, 12 foot would be nice too.
Well, if you're gonna dream, you might as well dream good size.
Well, even now, tell you quite honestly, if I say, Jim, let's go do this or let's go do that takes us away from the beach, his comment will be, well, what if there are waves that day?
When I met my wife, she was like, you're older now. Why do you surf? Why don't you take up golf or something? Well, I don't golf. I surf. It's a whole way of thinking and living, I guess.
And I got the surfer's dream now, because now I'm marrying a girl who wants to learn how to surf and hang out with me at the beach. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. What's better than that?
But on our wedding day, you better not be surfing.
Not like Tasker, 12 o'clock?
No.
Gotta be at 12:30?
Not unless I'm there.
Someone said to me today, who was it? Said, oh, did he surf yesterday? I said, yeah, of course. He's like, good. Your marriage didn't get in the way of surfing. I'm like, no, my marriage is not getting in the way of surfing. Definitely not. It's good. I'm glad to surf whenever you want.
People's perception of life changed. You really can't just travel for your whole life and, have everything you need in your surfboard bag. Eventually, you can have children, get married, and things can happen. So then you can't just be running.
Most surfers who live locally are lucky enough to blend all that together. It all seems to work one way or another.
This event is just the end of the summer when we get our beach back from the tourists and we come down here with all our surfboards, we have a clam bake, and the kids can surf all day. We take kayaks in the water, and it's our Labor Day, right? Hi. And this is Megan, my daughter Megan, her friend Aaron, and Haley.
The guys who became the firemen and stuff, I thought were crazy. I thought, how can you do that? How can you actually plan out your life at this young age? But it turned out really good for all of them. They ended up with, real estate in Rockaway, block from the beach. And I just kept kind of wandering around, looking for something. And I really don't think I found it until I moved out here. Because this reminded me of Rockaway Point, where I grew up. The bay, the fish, the pulse of nature is what guides the place. That's kind of what made me tick in Rockaway.
I surfed here together for at least 13 years. And even when I would go away, travel or something, I'd come back and this is where we come back to. Until it got to the point where it was so seedy down here that we couldn't really stay. And then I started surfing in Long Beach.
A lot of the guys that grew up here, Rockaway started going down the hills, and people, we wanted a little better life. It's a little bit nicer over the bridge. It's people take care of their houses, take care of the community. Now there's like nothing here. It's like,
They're talking about possibly recreating an Atlantic City here and making it a haven of gambling casinos. A quick fix answer.
Get smaller every day. You're like a plane flying over me, waving bye-byes. Go bye-bye.
There was a freedom about this place that defined itself.
It stopped really because they dredged the beach one year. And that was possibly the last great swell that was here, and I was on it that day. One witnessed that.
Guys,
it was one of the best days of surf ever. And they dredged all the sand, they filled in all the beaches, and they covered all the jetties. And now, instead of just having a sandbar off the end of Wayank Beach, the sandbar extends a mile across here now, maybe 2 miles across, and about a mile out, so that the waves break out there now and they don't come in anymore. So once the waves died out and people were dying out from drugs and rock and roll, it kind of just faded out.
It was one day at 5:30. I went down to the beach. The afternoon was dying. There was purple at its feet. I love the shades of nightfall, the faded blues and grays, the silver on the water seems to push so many things away, all away. Do, 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 do. Well, the candle of the day has burnt down to wick. The candle of the night has not yet been lit. 1 hour and 5 minutes, that's all I ever need to take the faith from the mothership, see the glory, God. This is what